Hey there, friends. This is Bryan Ewald here for two things today. One, a quick little free guitar lesson, tip or trick, maybe more than a lesson, for anybody who is struggling or has a hard time sometimes finding the right scale for a given chord progression or song, whether you're just starting and it's all new to you, or you've been playing for a while and hit a brick wall with certain songs, or if you're one of those people that has been playing for a while and just the idea when people start talking about modes and scales and theory and formulas and names and numbers, you just kind of glass over and go, no, that's not for me. This requires none of that. It's really just a very simple little trick that will work with any shape. I'm going to show you one, and all you need is one shape, and it can really work over major and minor circumstances and all kinds of different chord progressions. Not every song in the world, but most often you'll be able to use this and find a great 7-note scale pattern that'll work. I'll show you a simple one, but all you need is this trick and your ear and no fancy music theory. So we're going to start off with a major scale shape, and I'm going to play it backwards from the root note, backwards from the high E string. So let's say we wanted to play an E major scale. I'll start here on the 12th fret on an E note, and going backwards, we're going to play 12, 11, 9, 12, 10, 9 on the B, and then 11, 9 on the G. Now that's one octave of it. Okay, so start off with that. But if you want to turn this into a full scale across all 6 strings, this would be the rest of the pattern. And then from there we'll go down another half step to 8. And the next string would just be 11, 9, and then 12, 11, 9, and 12, 11, 9. So that would be the full pattern. Okay. But right now, just picture these bottom 3 strings, the treble 3 strings, and this top note is our root note. That's what we want to concern ourselves with, where that is. So if I wanted to play a C major scale, I'd find a C note on the high E string and put it right there. Now, I've made this little couple rhythm guitar tracks that are all based around some sound of an E. Some E major, some E minor, but all with different chords and different sounds in them. Each one of these has a different scale that sounds best with it. So what I'm going to do is show you how to take the shape I just showed you and find the best place to put it on the neck so it works good with each of these chord progressions. And this will work with virtually any song with a little experimentation. So the way we're going to go through and try to figure this out is we just need to look real quick at what a major scale is. A major scale is built up of 2 whole steps and a half step, and then 3 whole steps and a half step. Now, the reason why I'm pointing that out and what I want you to focus on, there's 5 whole step jumps throughout that scale, and there's 2 half steps. So those 2 half steps are what we're going to focus on, and what we're going to try to find by ear a half step pattern that sounds good within any song. That can only be in one of 2 places within that major scale. Now, I keep talking about major scale, but what you have to keep in mind is that all these other sounds, minor sounds, and all the sounds that when you hear the term modes, that are all these different sounds, they're nothing but this major scale pattern from a different vantage point. So we don't need to worry about all that in the names. Let's start off with one that's not a major sound. Here's a rhythm track. It's E minor and A7. Okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to play on the high E string, just half step motions. Until I find something that sounds good against this track. Okay? That's all right. So this one sounded all right between those. All right. So that is in one of 2 places in my scale. Remember, a major scale is 2 whole steps and a half, then 3 whole steps and a half. If I were to overlay those, and I'm going to put a little diagram so it makes more sense. If I overlay them, from any half step in one of these diatonic scales, 2 whole steps will always sound good after it. And then it's a matter of, does a half step follow that or a whole step follow that? So let me show you. Against this, if we know this sounds good, I should be able to play 2 whole steps that sound good, which they do. And then it's a matter of, does this sound good or this? That one sounds better to me. This is your method. You find a half step that sounds good. Try this. Go 2 whole steps. That should always sound good. Then is it going to be this or this? That's all we need to figure out. Is this or this? If from this first half step we find I go 2 and then that sounds good, then the top note of that bottom group of half steps is my root note. That's where I start the scale. If I can do 3 whole steps before it sounds good, then this very, very top note that I just played on the 2, that's the root note of my scale. I know it sounds like a little bit to think about right now, but as I go through these examples, hopefully it'll clear up. So let's go back to this one. That sounded good. So I tried 2 whole steps. Will always sound good. And then we figured out that a 3rd whole step sounded good before my next half step. So when that's the case, if I play the scale I just talked about, that major scale backwards, with my pinky on that note, if I play this pattern, I'm just going to stay right here on these 3 strings. This should all sound fine. So that was that major scale I showed you. Okay, so now let's try the next example and try to quickly go through these, and hopefully the pattern, the method will make more sense as we go. So I want to look for any half step that sounds good. So there's one right there. That half step sounds good. Now, mind you, if you're playing a riff and there's a half step in the riff, you already know where there's a half step. You can just start from there. But we found a half step. It sounded good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try these next 2 whole steps. Should sound fine. Then I want to decide if it's this or this that sounds better. If it's this, right, then this is the root note of the key. If I do 2 whole steps and another before the half step, then that's my root. So it's either this root or that root. And the way to tell is it this or this, okay? So we already knew those were going to sound good then. Is it this or this? Definitely this, right? So it was 3 whole steps before another half step. So that's my 4th note, 4th. And then it goes 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. This is my root note. So I'm going to play that scale with my pinky there, and it should sound fine. Same shape as I used on the other song. This one is a major sound. The other was minor. Remember, this one had a minor sound. I used the same shape, just 2 frets lower. All right, let's quickly go to the next one. Let's see what this sounds like. Still around some E sound. Still around E, but a very different sound. So I'm going to hunt around and find my half step. Found a half step that works, okay? The way I figured it out, remember, 2 whole steps beyond this should sound great, and whether or not it's this or this, right? So from that half step, I go up 2 more whole steps. That should work. And then is this good or that good? If this is good, there's my root note. If that's good, there's my root note. Okay? So let's try it. Or that sounds better to me than no, right? So that means this is my root note. Okay, so if I go 2 whole steps and then a half step works, then that's my root note. The more you do this, the quicker you get at it. So if I know that's my root note, let's go back to this shape that we did up here. Now we're just putting our pinky on that, and let's see if it works. I've used the exact same scale shape for each one of these. They're all very different sounding modes. They're different sounding scales, but it's the same shape, right? Here's another one. Still around E. Like an E bluesy thing. Okay? It's like a little E blues riff. So again, let's go through our half steps. I'll do it up an octave. That works. Those 2 sound fine. So again, we try 3 or 2 after it. If there's a half step, do I do 2 whole steps and a half, or 3 whole steps and a half? That sounds best to me, as opposed to, right? So that means I was starting on, that's my 7-1 then. So that's my root note. If I had gone here, then that would be my root note. So remember, if the half step is on the lower part, it's the bottom root note. If it's on the upper part, it's the top root. So if that means that's my root note, then I can play this scale that we've been playing every time, this little tiny snippet of a scale, and it should work totally fine for this. I can play it there, or I can move it up an octave. I'll try both. Again, same shape I've been using for all of these. Sounds different every time. Here we've got a minor 7-flat 5 chord. So here you got a little progression with this weird little E minor 7-flat 5 as our final sound. Instead of having to have this wealth of knowledge of scales and how they work, which, again, I'm not against by any means. I'm not trying to say that that's not a great method. But if you're looking for a quick find for it, start looking for our half steps. So my very first thing I tried, open to the first fret on the E string, sounds fine, sounds great, right? So from there, that means from open to 1 or 12 to 13, doesn't matter which one I do. I go 2 whole steps above it, which will sound fine. And then is it this or this? And if it's this, there's my root note. And if it's this, there's my root note, okay? So I'm going to try this note or this note. That sounds pretty good. Definitely that B flat note, right? That sounds better than... So that means if it's the lower 2 whole steps then a half, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's my 1 right there. So it's an F. This is all based around an F major scale, or a mode of F major, right? So I can start, I can't really do my shape down here, so I can move it up to this F on the 13th fret. So I'll do the same shape we've been doing, and I'm going to stick just to those bottom 3 strings. I'm not going anywhere else, and it should sound fine over this. Doesn't sound like a major scale at all anymore, does it? All right. Same little pattern for all these different songs, all works. It's just knowing where to place it on the neck. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't cover the neck and all this stuff, but remember, when you're covering the neck with all these other shapes or modes, which are really just the same pattern spread around the neck, you're playing the exact same 7 notes that would have worked for this in a different shape. The sounds that you're getting aren't really different sounds. All the sounds of that mode are in that area that I'm playing. I can get all 7 notes there. So there's cool things about moving around the neck, but if you can make this work and sound musical and make melodies or patterns out of here, then as you move around the neck, you'll just have more options. If you can't make something musical out of this, knowing other patterns of it isn't going to be any more interesting. You need to be able to make music with the notes that you have in this pattern, I think. Okay, so that's like this little E minor climb up to G, A minor to C. Same thing. Let's look for our half steps. From the 2nd fret to the 3rd fret. Sounds pretty good over this. So again, I try these 2 will work, and then is it this or this? This or this? And if it's this, there's my root note. If it's this, there's my root note. Okay? Sounds pretty good. Now, it's definitely this. That C note, which makes sense because it goes to a C chord, right? So if I know it's this, then there's my root note. If it were this, that would have been my root note. So it's G. So what I do, again, I could play the open position, or I can move it up an octave. So I should be able to play that same shape I've been playing, but with my pinky on the 15th fret. All those notes work. One final one. If you notice, I've done 7 of them. And that's because there's really 7 different ways that this scale can sound. But I'm showing you all the different types of typical sounds you're going to find in any of the modes of the major scale, but without having to worry about what they're called at this point. All right, again, we're looking for half steps. Again, just like in a little progression a few minutes back, that open to the 1st fret works great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try from there 2 whole steps. It's either this or that. Not great. So it was the 3 whole steps before a half step, right? So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. There's my root note right there. So it's C. 8th fret of the E string, C. So I'm going to play this scale that I've been playing the whole time, but starting with my pinky on the C note, and let's see if it works. very dark minor sound, but the exact same shape. Try it. Mess around with this. The more you mess with it, the quicker you'll get at it. It's a great idea to learn why this is and learn to make sense of it. If music theory is something that fascinates you, I highly recommend. It was the best thing I ever did, was to try to make sense of the things I was doing. It opened up a whole new world for me. If you mix that with using your ears with things, it's amazing what you can accomplish. You can go really far just using your ear and little tricks like this. But it's all about application. How can you use it and what you do? So try this over some songs. Pop on the radio, just hit, random on a playlist, and sit there and see if you can find how to place that little 7-note thing over any possible song. If it works for a minute and then changes, then what's happening is that song is probably changing keys or using borrowed chords from other keys at times to where certain notes sound funky. And that happens. That's definitely common. And then if you ask, what about pentatonic scales? All a pentatonic scale is one of these 7-note scales with 2 notes taken away. So it's much easier to find and place pentatonics than it is these full 7-note scales. So, I would say if you can do this, the pentatonic thing is actually a lot easier to find. So mess with this, see how it goes for you. If you want to learn some more stuff, August 9th through 12th, 2001, check out prsmusicschool.com, and I hope to see you soon.